if we could turn back a few pages at 221. 221. Light one candle. Bill, if you can announce that on the mic. Number 221.
221.
Light one candle. This is by Peter Yarrow of Peter, Paul, and Mary fame. Thank you. Could you go to number 255? There's a star in the east.
Unitarian Universalist. My name is Eric Conrad. I'm a member of the Worship Associates Ministry here at the church. I especially want to welcome any visitors or newcomers to our church and to call your attention to a special note for you entitled Welcome Guests and Newcomers in the Order of Service today. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived at this beloved place, you are welcome here. As we continue our reopening, I want to mention a few things to keep in mind. We are masking inside on Sunday mornings as a way of striving to be an inclusive community. After the service, we invite you to gather in two different areas. The courtyard out there is a mask optional space for fellowship, and the area behind the Jonesville building, which includes the porch, grassy area, and playground, is a space where masking is mandatory. We are not currently passing the offering baskets, so please make your donation online or place your donation in the offering baskets as you enter or exit the sanctuary. Our virtual coffee hour today at 11:30 will be hosted by Rachel Rose and the Welcoming Ministry. The Zoom link is in the weekly announcements and the Sunday morning email. Please turn off or silence any cell phones during our service to maintain a worshipful experience. And
I apologize in advance for anyone who may be taken aback by this song, but we thought the Christmas season could use a little humor, and we really enjoyed putting it together. This is one of those songs where the meaning of the words has a lot to do with where you place the comma, so you may want to listen as you go along, like eats, shoots, and leaves.
Strike Uncle John. Please will you come to Uncle John? Gather around for no good, good for nothing. When will you come to Uncle John? When will you come to Uncle John? When will you come to Uncle John? When will you come to Uncle John?
The living tradition which we as Unitarian Universalists share draws from many sources. Among those in our canonical list, number 4 states, Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbor as ourselves. Echoes are found in the prophets. In Micah, we find the following poem: "With what shall I approach the Lord? Do homage to God on high? Shall I approach him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? He has told you, O man, what is good, and what the Lord requires of you, only to do justice, to love goodness, and to walk modestly with your God." In the Leviticus scroll, there are a number of prescriptions which lay out what love of neighbors implied in the 6th century BCE. Of these, my personal favorite states, "When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap all the way to the edges of your field, or garner the gleanings of your harvest. You shall not pick your vineyards bare, or gather the fallen fruit of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger. I am the Lord your God." This collection of prescriptions culminates several verses later in a succinct summary. "You shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." Come, let us celebrate our heritage. Yeah. Okay. The words for the chalice lighting are found in your order of service. Please join with me in reading them. In this holiday season, may the coldness of winter be dispelled in this festival of lights, and may the coldness of ignorance and hatred be dispelled by the warmth of compassion, love, and sharing.
And this morning, lead this microphone on. There we go. And this morning, we not only light our chalice, but we also light on this third Sunday of Advent the first 3 candles on our Advent wreath. The first 2 were lit for hope and for peace, and this morning we light a third candle for joy. Let us sing together. Our next hymn this morning is "O Come All Ye Faithful." You'll notice that parts of it are in Latin. We are not going to sing the Latin verse first. Get this right. Oh, what else? I going to let you handle it? Oh. Do you want to give?
Yeah, so we won't sing the Latin verse. There's a lot of groans.
Glenn, you want to handle it? All right.
Well, I was going to cut the Latin verse too, but I think now that so many people wanted do it. Just the people who want to sing the Latin, please sing out loudly so the people who don't want to can sing along. And I would give you the choice of singing, the chorus is Venite adoremus, or Oh Come Let Us Adore Him, if that's what you're more familiar with. So I think the goal is whatever allows you to sing out with more gusto. So if that's Venite adoremus, or Oh Come Let Us Adore Him, I think that you can sing them at the same time and nobody will be the wiser. So please stand and let's sing number 253.
This is fun. It has been a long time since we have been able to do one of these. It is a especially joyous event to be able to honor and to celebrate the arrival of a brand new life, and today we gather for a ceremony of child dedication. And so I would ask for Dana and Amber to come forward, please, and join me up here. Dana, Amber, the act of parenting is an opportunity for tremendous joy, and it is also a sacred responsibility. As the parents of this child, the primary responsibility for caring for this life belongs to you. I charge you to care for and to nurture this child, to keep her best interests in mind, to treat her with love and to respect her as she grows and develops. I charge you to teach her well, to honor her curiosity, and to be an example of goodness and caring for her. And so I ask you today, will you promise to be the best parents that you can be and to strive to treat your daughter with love, care, and respect? We do. And you've invited some friends to join us today and family. Would you take a moment to say hi to them and point them out?
We have with us today our family, our godparents, Sarah Louise, and godfather, Uncle Corey, and Tara, our friends Courtney, Robin, Sam, Hendricks, Aunt Louise, our friends Linda and Jim, and my mom, Karen.
Hey. Welcome. It is good and wise to involve many in the life of your child. Your family and friends, both those joining us today and those who cannot be here, will have an important role to play. They will be examples of love and friendship to your child and provide a warm network of care. They'll be a source of wisdom as they assist you in the demands of parenting. And so I ask larger family and friends, will you be a resource for Dana and Amber and a source of love and support for this child? If so, please say together, we will. And it is also good and wise to belong to a church community that will serve your spiritual needs as well as the spiritual needs of this baby. Church is a place that helps us to become our best selves, to share our joy, to express our grief, to confront our fears, and to grow and develop. You have chosen a church that stands for values of acceptance, justice, and the search for truth. And so I ask the congregation, will you promise to walk with this family and to dedicate yourself to caring for the spiritual needs of this child? If so, please say, we will. We will. And now we usually do this. We usually do child dedication at a multi-generational service, but with the timing, that didn't quite work out. But I do see some children who have joined us in there today. And so the children actually have a special role to play. And so if you are a child or a youth, I would invite you to stand up as tall as you can because you have an important role to play this morning. All right. All of the children of this church, right now, this baby here is very small. But soon, very soon, she is going to be big enough to play with all of you. And so I ask you, the children and youth of the church, when this baby is old enough, will you promise to include her, to be nice to her, to make her feel welcomed as a part of this church? If so, I want you to say really loud, we will. Thank you. I ask you now, Amber and Dana, what is the name you have chosen for this child? Norma Lorraine Brown. I bless you with this name, alone among all children, and with water from our blessing bowl, I am going to touch your hands, your feet, your head, and your heart. Touching your little hands. Touching your hands, I bless your creativity. With these hands, may you hold the hands of another. Touching your feet, I bless you on your journeys in life. May you go far. Blessing, touching your forehead, I bless your mind, its curiosity and its wonder. And blessing, touching your heart, I pray that your heart knows love. The love that your parents, your big brother, your family, your friends, and your church have for you. And this morning, Norma Lorraine Brown, I offer you this flower, which I think we're going to give to your mom here. This flower symbolizes beauty, for you are a very, very beautiful baby. This flower symbolizes individuality. Like you, it is unique. And this flower symbolizes love, the love which we give to you and which you share with us this day. Thank you. I invite us to sing once more. Please join with me in singing a hymn. This Sunday, when we lift up both our Jewish and Christian heritage, we are going to sing a hymn, a Hanukkah hymn, about a week late. It is number 223, and I invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we sing together. Each week in our service, we hold a time for sharing the joys and the sorrows we bring with us into this church community. It's during this time that if you've come this morning with either a significant personal joy or a significant sorrow, you're invited to come forward to place a stone in the water bowl, say your name, and in a sentence or two, share your joy or your sorrow. Let us enter into this time of tenderness and trust. Are there any joys and sorrows this morning?
Good morning. I'm Rosemary Dean, and I shared about a little boy named Jojo a while back who's been fighting a neuroblastoma for almost 3 years. And this is his first Christmas in 3 years that he has clear scans, and he's cancer-free.
Good morning. I'm Ray Dawson, and I have a joy to share this morning. My son, whom I have not seen since September of 2019, arrived Friday night and is staying with me through tomorrow.
Good morning. My name is Kate Shipman. This is my mom, Linda Shipman. I'm replacing a stone this morning for Lynn Davis and her son Tim and her husband, whose name I forget. Reed. And Lynn passed away over the weekend from cancer. And Tim and I were in school together. We were in high school, middle school youth group together. And he'd be about 34. And my heart just aches for all of them because they were very close, and she was love. So.
And they were former members of our church as well. Some of you may remember them.
Good morning, I'm Jenny Warnash. The stone is for my Uncle Dita. He died 2 weeks ago today, and for his boys, my cousins, Scott and Eric. They lost their mom in March of 2020, and now their dad.
My name is Diana McDuffie, and I have family from Western Kentucky, and they're all safe, but my recently widowed brother-in-law was from the town of Mayfield, and as I see the devastation that's covering the state of Kentucky right now, I remember those small towns and the kind of people who live there. And I ask that you just hold them in your thoughts and prayers.
This stone is for my wife's brother, Steve, who passed away suddenly right before Thanksgiving when they were going to visit us. And he was a kind, gentle soul, and he'll be sorely missed.
Two stones to place for those in our congregation who could not be here this morning. Susan Spalt asks to drop a stone for her good friend Edwina, who died on December 1st. From glioblastoma sooner than we had hoped. So we hold Susan Spalt in our hearts. And Susan Blanchard asked me to share a joy, which is that she had her right knee replaced on Tuesday and is home taking the meds and doing the exercises as directed by her community church knee replacement support team, which I didn't even know that ministry existed. Susan also very much appreciates the medical equipment loans she's received from our community. And a final stone is placed, as it is each week, for all of those joys and sorrows we hold in our hearts which were not spoken. I invite you to join with me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, source of our being and our becoming. We hold this morning especially the joys as well as the sorrows of those in our community. We remember family and friends whose death leaves us in sorrow. especially in this season. We hold in our hearts all of those struggling with illness, and we rejoice. Rejoice for those who are healing and recovering. We send our hearts on this morning to those in Kentucky and the Midwest, facing the horrors of tornadoes. And we rejoice. Rejoice for families reunited, for the joy of seeing those we have missed so long. May the spirit of this season dwell within us, leading us to greater understanding, greater generosity, to hope and joy even in the midst of hardship, and to a greater peace, despite the conflicts of our times. In the midst of all of these prayers, we hold a time for the prayers of our own hearts. I invite you to be still with me for a time. Amen. Blessed be. And I invite us to continue in this spirit of reflection as we hear the community singers sing for us once more. Two stories came to mind as I was composing the sermon. The first story is about Thomas Jefferson, and the second story is about the time I broke up a fight between two men at a Christian megachurch during a speech by Jerry Falwell. But don't clap yet. Both stories made it into the sermon this morning. One will come at the beginning, the other at the end. First, the Thomas Jefferson story. And of course, whenever we speak of Jefferson, it's important to acknowledge his legacy as an enslaver and a sexual abuser. But this morning, I want to actually speak about a different part of Jefferson's legacy, having to do with the curiosities of his religious thought. How many people here have ever heard of the Jefferson Bible? A few, look at that. Maybe half. When Jefferson was president of the United States, he began a religious project. He bought a stack of Bibles and set out to combine the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, into a single narrative. Using a razor blade, he cut up the Gospels, taking only the parts that he felt were worthy of saving and discarding the rest. Jefferson called this project the Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth, and the end result is a slim compilation of the Gospels containing the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, Jesus' sayings, teachings, and parables, and the very basic, bare-bones narrative structure of Jesus' life. Jefferson's new scripture, though, did not include the virgin birth, the resurrection, or any of the healings or miracles. No water into wine at the wedding of Cana, no raising of Lazarus. In fact, in the Jefferson Bible, the Christmas story goes like this. There went out a decree from Caesar that all the world should be taxed, and Joseph went up from Galilee into the city of Bethlehem to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. And the time came for Mary to be delivered, and she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them at the inn. And when he was 8 days old, he was circumcised and named Jesus. That's it. No annunciation, no angel Gabriel, no dream for Joseph, no shepherds, no angels in the field, no wise men, no star. For Jefferson, Jesus was nothing less and nothing more than a sublime moral teacher, and all that other stuff was beside the point. A needless distraction from the perfect moral teachings of Jesus. This morning is the fifth sermon in a 6-part sermon series on the 6 sources of Unitarian Universalism. I preached 2 sermons on the sources in October, 2 in November, and I'll finish up the series in April when I return from my sabbatical. When I talk about the sources, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you actually have a version of them right at hand. All you have to do is open your hymnal to hymn number 1, turn back 1 page, and there on the left side you'll find a couple of sections. At the top, immediately under the heading, We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, you'll find the 7 principles, running from the inherent worth and dignity of every person to the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And then right under that comes the heading, The living tradition we share draws from many sources. And under that you'll find listed the 6 sources. And this morning's sermon is about one of those 6, Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. This morning I want to talk about that source. I want to talk about our relationship with Judaism and Christianity. I want to ask whether we're a Christian faith or whether we're a Judeo-Christian faith, whatever that means. And I want to ask whether that source gets it right. See, I thought this would be a good source to talk about on a Sunday in December, a week or so after the conclusion of the Jewish festival of Hanukkah, a couple of weeks before the Christian holiday of Christmas. But in a way, I was kind of mistaken, because neither Christmas nor Hanukkah are especially moral or ethical holidays. Neither holiday at its core is about the moral teachings of Jesus. The messages of both holidays have to do more with the realms of spiritual inspiration than with ethical commandments, which is fine. Jefferson removed the Christmas story because it had more to do with spiritual beliefs than with ethical teachings. Which raises the question, is religion fundamentally about a set of ethical precepts and moral understandings? Can we reduce religion to a set of ethical precepts and moral understandings? And for us as Unitarian Universalists, is this source literally true? Is all that Christianity and Judaism inspire in this faith some moral teachings, or is there more? Historically, Unitarian Universalism traces its ancestry back to two denominations, the Unitarians and the Universalists, which emerged out of the Protestant tradition in the United States and Western Europe. Unitarians and Universalists each considered themselves Christian, though more orthodox critics considered them to be heretics. If both Unitarianism and Universalism began as Christian traditions, what shifted? How did our faith move from that to what it is today? As far as I can tell, within both Unitarianism and Universalism, there became less and increasingly even less interest in debating the finer points of theology as a religious exercise. I think back to the early 1800s, and the early Unitarians became embroiled in what became known as the miracles controversy, a theological debate over the nature of the miracles Jesus performed in the Gospels. And then at that same time that the Unitarians were fighting about miracles, the Universalists became embroiled in the restorationist controversy. I think some of our seminarians read about this. It's been a while since I have. The Universalists rejected the idea of eternal damnation, but they actually had a fight over whether there could be a little damnation or none at all. And so there were the restorationists and the ultra-universalists who had it out with each other over whether there was a little damnation or no damnation at all. But mostly, there just became less willingness to squabble over theology. Our faith became less and less about having the right thoughts about God or the right thoughts about Jesus, and more about trying to embody the values, the ethics, the morals that these stories inspire. In this same way, the actual history of this church, the Community Church of Chapel Hill, follows this same trajectory over a much shorter period. This congregation, this church's first minister, Charlie Jones, left the Presbyterians over a heresy trial, over a fight over the nature of God and Jesus. If you read the script of that heresy trial, there was actually, the question was posed to Charlie Jones whether the Son is co-eternal with the Father. And Charlie Jones said, I don't even know what that means. That's what he says in the script. I don't even know what that means. But here at the Community Church of Chapel Hill, the church established itself with no theological battle, saying that the finer points of theology would not be a limitation to who could come here. And in fact, the earliest members of this church included people who did not consider themselves Christian, included people from the Jewish tradition who were among the founding members, who said that the finer points of theology are not necessary for me to live in a way that is ethical and moral and good. The Unitarians' history of welcoming and embracing Judaism is also interesting. One of the things that the Christian tradition has had to struggle with, or should have had to struggle with, and has struggled with, is the inherent anti-Semitism that is part of the Christian story, going all the way back to the Gospels. And after World War II, after the horrors of the Holocaust, mainline Christianity, liberal Christianity, and Unitarian Universalism actually did a lot of theologizing, soul-searching, and struggling to understand both the parts of the gospel stories and the parts of the New Testament that were anti-Jewish, and to reform a new faith. So, for example, who here grew up here learning about the Old Testament and the New Testament? And in fact, those terms are no longer in use. They're referred to as the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Scriptures. The New Testament is still the New Testament, because there is this sense that by calling it the Old Testament, that we are, putting down or diminishing Judaism and calling it an incomplete faith. And so there is this, in mainline Christianity, there is this rewriting of and re-understanding of the tradition. In Unitarian Universalism, it is paradoxically that insistence on the finer points of theology being able to be put aside to the side that has made this faith a welcoming home for many from the Jewish tradition, where you don't need to, accept Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior to feel welcomed in. And with that has come a wonderful understanding of the rich ethical traditions of the Hebrew Bible. How many people grew up hearing that the Old Testament God was angry and the New Testament God was love? And that itself was another piece of anti-Judaism that is fundamentally untrue. That idea of love your neighbor as yourselves, that idea of do unto the least of these, that idea of care for the stranger and protect the widow, those are fundamentally from Old Testament or Hebrew Bible, see I do it, from Hebrew Bible scriptures. And so with that understanding that there is a rich and dynamic and beautiful and challenging and even more progressive ethical view that's found in the Hebrew Bible in Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and the prophets in Isaiah and Jeremiah and Michael and the ones that Eric read from us today, that informs our faith. So I'd say it's not just the ethical lessons from Judaism that inform our faith, but they certainly do. Which leads me to my second story. It was fall of 2004. I was just starting my second year in ministry, and out of the blue, I get a call from the producers of Air America Radio. Air America, if we remember that, was an attempt to launch a liberal radio station as a challenge to conservative talk radio. And the producer calls me up and says, Jerry Falwell is going to be speaking at a prayer breakfast at an evangelical megachurch in your town, and we're going to be sending a reporter from New York to do a story about it, but the reporter is nervous, and we wanted someone local who could help him feel comfortable. And I was like, I'm in. So the morning comes, and I meet the reporter in the parking lot of the megachurch, and I go to sit in his van. And the moment I see him, I think, uh-oh. So this guy was about the trendiest man I have ever met. He has got on this sleek black pinstripe suit with a lime green button-up shirt with a flared collar and black and white wingtip shoes, perfectly shined. I mean, he looks like he's heading to a avant-garde gallery opening in Brooklyn, not to a prayer breakfast in the Midwest. I understood the assignment. I'm wearing a navy blazer and khakis. Every other person there is wearing a navy blazer and khakis. And I see this reporter and I think, man, this guy is going to stick out like a sore thumb. So we go in and we mill around, and he has a microphone, and he's sort of trying to talk with people and get them to answer questions. And then eventually we sit down, and Jerry Falwell comes out and speaks and is utterly vile. The gays are persecuting Christians, the atheists are persecuting Christians, the gays are coming for your children, all of that stuff. Just vile, disgusting, and reprehensible. And the reporter is getting kind of agitated, and then all of a sudden, he looks, and in the back of the room, he sees a man sitting back there. Remember, everybody else in the room is wearing navy blazer, khakis. And this guy in the back of the room is also sticking out like a sore thumb. He is wearing Jewish liturgical dress, a kippah and a talit. And the reporter says to me, I want to go talk to this guy. So the reporter goes and begins asking questions to the Jewish man in the back of the room, and comes to discover that the man in the back of the room is probably from a sect that he's never met before, and comes to discover that this guy is like a hardcore Jerry Falwell supporter who believes that what this message of a Christian-only country would actually be good for is good for the Jewish people, which was just wild. And so the reporter is so struck by this that they begin to argue. And they begin to have it out in the back of the room while Jerry Falwell is giving this speech. And the reporter begins by asking questions, and then he begins by sort of asking questions, and then he leads to just making statements. And he says to the man, the reporter says to the man, your presence here is a disgrace to the Jewish faith. And the guy pushes him. And I jump in the middle, and pull out, I'm like, we have got to go. And so I drag the Air America reporter out of the Christian megachurch as Jerry Falwell is giving a speech. So I worried that he was going to get, I did not know what was going to happen, but I didn't think that there was anything left to happen that was good from being there. What's the conclusion from all of this? It says, as Unitarian Universalists, one of the sources of our faith are Jewish and Christian teachings that call on us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. While I do not believe that you can ever reduce a religion, any religion, not just Christianity or Judaism, but Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, I don't think you can reduce any religion down to just its ethical center, to just its ethical core. But neither can you separate it from its ethical core. And what I believe that reporter was saying to this man was, how did you become so separate from your ethical core? At least that's the meaning that I take from it. And so we celebrate that ethical core which calls on us to love our neighbors as ourselves, calls on us to defend the marginalized, to care for the stranger, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, and to practice that wider love for which God is known. Amen. Blessed be. And thanks for letting me tell that story in church. I see we're a little bit over, but we're going to sing our closing hymn of the morning. And I have a little story behind this. This is a Christmas hymn, but it's also a hymn about that ethical core. It was written in the church in which I grew up in, a Unitarian church, has a Unitarian author, Edmund Hamilton Sears, and was written to be sung at Christmas time, but was also written to oppose the Mexican-American War. And so combining that ethical center with the Christian story, I invite us to rise and sing our closing hymn, It Came Upon the Midnight Clear. I invite you to remain standing, and just before Eric leads us in the extinguishing of the chalice and singing of Shalom, I want to announce that this morning is the holiday bazaar, that there's coffee out in the courtyard, but that inside we have a number of church artisans and artists and writers and musicians who have their wares for sale, everything CDs and books and honey and pottery and other such wonderful things. So if you're in that mood, please stop into the Jones building and check out what's there.
The words for extinguishing the flame are in the order of service. Please join with me in saying them. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please join in singing Shalom. Pardon? You can join hands if you like.